1872. Grand Duke Alexei of Russia granted
Welcome to Royal Affairs Unveiled, where we dig beneath the gold dust and gunpowder of the American frontier to uncover stories that history textbooks rarely tell. Today, we are stepping back into the rugged, untamed world of the Old West, but not the version you have seen in Hollywood films. Today, we're talking about royalty. Real royalty. Crowned heads, blue-blooded aristocrats, entitled nobility who rode into the wild frontier and left behind secrets that have fascinated historians for generations. So saddle up, because the Old West had more royal secrets than most European palaces. Let us begin with a name that might surprise you: Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich of Russia. In January of 1872, this young Russian prince, just 21 years old and the fourth son of Tsar Alexander II, embarked on one of the most extraordinary royal adventures ever recorded on American soil. He did not come quietly. He arrived with an entourage, military escorts, and the full attention of the United States
that
government.
Bull still got some
President
kick.
Ulysses
Watch it,
S.
he's getting up.
Grant
I ain't
personally
scared.
arranged a buffalo hunt in his honor, and not just any buffalo hunt. The guide selected for this grand occasion were none other than Buffalo Bill Cody himself and the legendary Sioux war leader Spotted Tail. Think about that for a moment. A Russian prince, a frontier showman, and a Native American chief, all sharing the same plains under the Nebraska sky. The hunt was a spectacle the likes of which the frontier had never seen. Alexei reportedly fired shot after shot before finally bringing down a buffalo, at which point Buffalo Bill uncorked a bottle of champagne right there on the open prairie. The Grand Duke drank it with the kind of joy that only a young man far from palace walls can truly feel. But what history rarely mentions is what happened after the cameras, so to
What a
speak,
view, gentlemen.
stopped
Indeed.
rolling.
Onward.
Alexei
The
had
wind
fallen
carries us.
deeply,
Let's ride.
scandalously in love with a commoner back in Russia, a woman named Alexandra Zakovskaya, the daughter of a poet. The Russian imperial family had forbidden the match entirely. Some historians believe his American adventure was as much about escaping heartbreak as it was about hunting buffalo. He was running from love, trying to lose himself in the enormity of the American wilderness. And in a way, the wide-open plains of Nebraska gave him something no palace ever could: the freedom, even briefly, to just be a man. Now, let us travel a little further south and a little deeper into mystery. The story of the so-called Lost Prince of the Ozarks is one that has circulated in Missouri folklore for well over a century. According to local legend, a well-dressed European man arrived in a small Ozark community sometime in the 1880s, speaking with a heavy accent and paying for everything in gold coins. He settled quietly, spoke little, and kept entirely to himself. When he died, those who prepared his body reportedly found markings and documents suggesting he was of noble European birth, possibly even connected to one of the royal houses that had been destabilized during the revolutions and political upheavals sweeping through Europe at the time. Was he a deposed prince hiding from enemies? A royal heir who had faked his death to escape the crushing weight of succession? The truth was never confirmed, but the gold coins were real. The documents, though never fully translated by anyone in the community, were real. And the grave, marked only with a simple stone bearing the initials that locals could not quite place in any family tree they knew, still sits on a hillside in the Ozarks. To this day, amateur historians and genealogists make pilgrimages to that spot, hoping to unlock what may be one of the Old West's greatest unsolved royal mysteries. The connection between European royalty and the American frontier was not always about adventure or mystery. Sometimes it was about money, enormous amounts of it. Consider the story of Moreton Fruin, a British aristocrat who arrived in Wyoming in the 1880s with grand ambitions and an even grander sense of entitlement. Fruin was connected to some of the most powerful families in England, and he had married into the Jerome family, which made him the brother-in-law of a woman who would one day become the mother of Winston Churchill. He established a cattle empire in Wyoming that he called the Powder River Cattle Company, and, at its height, it stretched across hundreds of thousands of acres. The British aristocracy poured money into his venture, convinced by Fruin's silver tongue that the American cattle business was the investment of the century. What they got instead was one of the most spectacular financial disasters the frontier had ever produced. Harsh winters, drought, mismanagement, and the brutal winter of 1886 to 1887, known as the Great Die-Up, wiped out millions of cattle across the plains. Fruin lost everything. His investors, many of them titled European nobles, lost fortunes. He returned to England essentially broke and spent the rest of his life chasing schemes that never quite materialized. The locals in Wyoming had a nickname for him. They called him Mortal Ruin, a play on his first name. But what his story reveals is something deeply significant. European royalty and nobility saw the American West not as a wild, lawless place to be feared, but as a canvas upon which they could paint their ambitions. And quite often, those ambitions ended in spectacular failure because they simply did not understand the land or its people. And then there's the story that takes us into even more shadowed territory, the alleged royal connections to the outlaw world of the Old West. There has long been a persistent rumor, dismissed by most mainstream historians but never entirely disproven, that Jesse James himself had correspondence with at least one European royal contact, not for romantic or social reasons, but for financial ones. The theory, advanced by several fringe researchers over the decades, suggests that the network of banks Jesse James targeted was not random, that certain robberies were conducted with the knowledge of powerful financial backers who wanted specific documents or assets retrieved from those banks. Assets connected to land grants, royal charters, and post-Civil War financial arrangements that European crown interests had quietly invested in. Now, let us be clear, there is no smoking gun document that proves this. Jesse James was many things, but a royal agent is a title most historians would laugh at. However, the kernel of intrigue here is worth examining, because the post-Civil War American West was absolutely awash in European financial interest. Crown-connected investment houses had poured capital into American railroads, land, cattle, and banking. The frontier economy was, in many ways, partially built on European aristocratic money. So while Jesse James probably had no direct royal correspondence, the financial structures he was robbing were absolutely entangled with old-world money and old-world power. Let us take a breath and travel now to Texas, because no royal story of the Old West would be complete without the strange and fascinating tale of Henri de Lusignan, or as he was known in the dusty border towns of the Rio Grande Valley, simply Henri the Frenchman. Henri arrived in Texas sometime around 1875, claiming descent from the medieval royal house of Lusignan, one of the most ancient and storied noble families in European history, with roots going back to the Crusades and a lineage that had once produced kings of Cyprus and Jerusalem. Whether his claim was legitimate has never been fully established, but Henri carried himself with the kind of unshakable confidence that made people believe him. He established a small but remarkably prosperous ranch outside of what is now Laredo, and he entertained visitors with a level of sophistication that seemed entirely out of place on the Texas frontier. He spoke 4 languages. He had an extensive library. He drank only imported wine, and he kept a journal that, according to his descendants, contained detailed accounts of meetings with Mexican political figures, American land speculators, and at least one visit from a European diplomatic contact whose identity was never recorded by name. When Henri died in 1901, his estate was modest,
will be guarded.
but among his possessions was a
I'm with
sealed
you.
letter bearing a wax crest that no one in his family could identify. That letter was never opened in public, and its current location is unknown. Some researchers believe it was destroyed. Others believe it is sitting in a private collection somewhere in Europe, still sealed, still secret. What these stories share, the Russian prince on the Nebraska plains, the lost nobleman of the Ozarks, the ruined British cattle baron, the outlaw-adjacent financial webs, the mysterious Frenchman of Texas, is a truth about the Old West that the frontier mythology has always obscured. The American West was never as isolated as the legends suggest. It was a place where the Old World and the New World collided in ways both grand and intimate. Royalty came to the frontier for the same reasons ordinary people did: for freedom, for fortune, for escape, for reinvention. The difference was that they brought with them the weight of crowns, the entanglements of dynasties, and secrets that courts and kingdoms had spent generations protecting. There's one more story we must tell before we close today's journey, and it is perhaps the most poignant of all. In the 1890s, a woman appeared in a small Colorado mining town. She went by the name Marie Laurent, spoke English with a French accent, dressed more finely than anyone in town could explain, and paid her bills without apparent effort. She worked as a seamstress and a music teacher, was known for her extraordinary kindness, and became deeply beloved in the community. When she died in 1903, a letter arrived from France, addressed to her in care of the town post office. It had taken 2 years to find her, the sender noted. The letter, written on paper bearing an embossed royal crest, was addressed to someone with a title. The town postmaster, who later shared the story with a local newspaper reporter, said the letter made reference to an inheritance, a family reconciliation long sought, and a title of nobility that the woman had never claimed. Marie Laurent, seamstress and music teacher of a Colorado mining town, had apparently been born into European royalty and had walked away from it entirely. She had chosen the frontier. She had chosen the ordinary life. And she had kept her secret until she was 2 years in the grave. That is the real secret of the Old West royals. It was not always about power or treasure or conspiracy. Sometimes it was simply
Picture
about
the Old
human
West.
soul
Let the image entitle
choosing
wider
a
the
different
little
life.
stranger of the Old West was
Choosing
right
wide
from the
skies.
movies.
Next time you
honest
picture the
work
Old West,
over gilded
let the
halls
image be a
and
little
inherited
stranger.
burdens. The
Add a
frontier
Russian
offered something that no royal court could: anonymity, reinvention, and the radical freedom to be no one in particular. And for a few remarkable, secret-keeping souls who happened to be born with blue blood in their veins, the Old West was not a place of wildness. It was a place of peace. Thank you for riding with us today on Royal Affairs Unveiled. If this story stirred something in you, share it with someone who loves history, hit that subscribe button, and leave us a comment telling us which royal secret surprised you most. Until next time, keep uncovering, keep questioning, and remember, the most powerful secrets are always the ones hiding in plain sight.